December 5th, 2016. This is Home Before Dark, episode number 92. Happy to be back with you guys. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving and that you guys are gearing up for an even better Christmas holiday. I am Tim, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host. We've been doing this going on 4 years, I think, in January.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, man. Kevin, mother effing Bradley. How are you tonight, dude?
I'm good. How about you?
Feeling good. Not feeling tank top good, but I'm feeling good. Yep. So it's funny you have that. That's your shaky knees one, right?
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight. Something you and I were talking about earlier today, and that's just music festivals. Just how preemptive a lot of their marketing is, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, just a couple things to get to tonight, at least on my part. I don't know what you want to discuss. That's the great part about this show. Harkens back to what banter was when we created it. It was just off the cuff. We're just us bullshitting. You guys get to listen to us talk to each other like we were talking on the phone back in the day. That's the crazy thing. Is this started off as a concept when you were in college. Just a little backstory. You and I would, because we didn't talk on Google Chat or anything like that. We would actually have phone calls every couple nights and, bullshit like this. And now you guys, hopefully you guys have been with us for a while. If not, welcome. And I feel like I'm rambling on like a Joe Rogan, but like no sponsors to talk of, just just fluffing us up. But I do want to clear this up. I wanted to say clear this up. If you guys are listening to us on iTunes, make sure that you subscribe to us and that you leave us at least a rating. Leave us a rating. It's as simple as clicking a button and leave us a review if you like the show. Let us know what you think. It helps tremendously. Helps get us in the rankings, helps people discover us a little easier when it comes to pop culture and all that. I mean, there is a flood of podcasts that cover some of the stuff that we cover. We like to think we cover everything, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe to our own detriment. I hope not. I hope that you guys don't mind. One of the things I was going to say is people, I think, will be relieved to know that you and I are both kind of disenchanted with Destiny.
Yeah, I haven't touched it. It's been, 3 weeks since we recorded last, and I haven't touched it probably a week or two before that last recording. Yeah, just completely disenfranchised, and then new content, I guess, if you want to call it that. New microtransaction type stuff was announced this weekend at the PlayStation Experience, which people were hoping was going to be some substantial content release. Information. We knew that Sparrow Racing League was coming back. They just confirmed that, and some other stuff that's just not enough to pull me back in, not considering the other games I've been playing and the joy I've had not playing. It seemed like the last few weekends that I did play, whenever I was playing Trials, it just got to be where I was getting more frustrated than actually enjoying it, and I hate being in that position when doing something that is a hobby and that is supposed to bring some sort of enjoyment.
Yeah, for sure. I'm back to where I was before, even after the April update, where I'm really just not that interested in playing the game anymore. And I think I want to break from it. I would say that I want Destiny 2 to come out, but I'm ready to wait. And
if Trials was somehow more accessible, and I think a big portion of that is just the player base. It's not there to sustain something like that game type without being really dedicated to playing week in and week out, and I'm just not willing to do that. So
yeah, no, that's completely understandable. One game that both of us have gotten, but you have actually started playing, I haven't. Just my typical, when a game goes on sale, just buy it and store it for later. But TitanFall 2, we both picked up, and you've been playing it a good bit, and you seem to be enjoying it quite a bit.
Yeah, it was something that I played the alpha test or whatever it was called and really, really enjoyed it. I loved the first game, and I was excited to get the new one. Seemed like it was a lot of the stuff from the first game, but just expanded upon. So more Titans and a lot more customization and stuff like that with your pilot. And most importantly, I think the thing that drew a lot of people to it, A, it's on PlayStation now as well. B, there's an actual campaign. And it is arguably, I got about a quarter of the way through the Gears campaign. I really want to go back to that, but it's the Gears campaign. Even though it's a great story, I kind of know what's going to happen. The gameplay per se isn't going to surprise me. The thing that I'm really enjoying about the Titanfall campaign is that it's the first iteration of it, and they've had 2 games to really hone in on the mechanics and what makes the game so successful, and find a way to create a dialogue and a story and a campaign around those mechanics. And it's really reminiscent of Portal 2 to me in that aspect. Whereas the first Portal game, there was a campaign, quote unquote, not really, a series of test rooms that you went through and some semblance of a story, that a narrative that went along with it. But it wasn't really until the second game that you got that. And they had the first game to really iron out the mechanics, what made the mechanic in the game so unique, and then find a way to construct that narrative around that. And I think that's what Titanfall 2 does really successfully. And a lot of, I mean, even down to some of the humor and stuff like that, which Portal 2 did really well, and Portal as a whole just did really well. So campaign for Titanfall 2, I'm having a blast with. The multiplayer is a lot of fun as well. I really like that bounty game type that they have, where it's every time you get a kill or do something on the map, there's little control points where the grunts and specters and all that come out and you get money. But if you die, if somebody kills you, it cuts your money in half. And then periodically throughout the game, after every 4 or 5 waves, banks open up on the maps, and you have to go to the bank to deposit your cash, and it's whoever gets up to a certain amount of cash banked at the end of the match wins. And so you're constantly playing to try to accumulate cash, but if you die, it cuts all your cash out. And so then whenever you go to the bank to deposit it, people will play the bank and like stay at the bank to kill you before you can actually deposit it. So it's a really neat game type. It's similar to a lot of the different things that a lot of different other game types. So it combines team deathmatch along with capture the flag and hard point. So I'm really digging that. Obviously the rest of the stuff is par for the course with the first game. So yeah, really digging it.
That's awesome, man. That's good to hear. Yeah, I have yet to dive in because I put something ahead of it that I've been playing, but I am looking forward to starting Titanfall 2 because I really did enjoy the first one, but by the time I think that I was done, I was playing it on PC. I didn't really have anybody to play with. I played with Brad occasionally. And then once I got my Xbox One, I think you were probably on to different things by the time.
I think Destiny had come out at that point, or Sunset Overdrive or something. But yeah,
probably so. Yeah, so yeah, I need to not get so far behind the curve, but I've probably got another 4 or 5 hours of Hyperlight Drifter to play before finishing it.
How's that?
Every bit as fulfilling as frustrating. So it's funny. In a nutshell, to describe the game, I was babysitting my 2 nephews on Saturday, and I put my 4-year-old nephew to bed. I went to go, watch. I'm trying to think of what I was watching with him. Some show called Slug Terra about these people controlling slugs down in the underworld or something like that. Anyway, I told my 10-year-old nephew that he can go out and play my Xbox, because he'd been asking me I've been telling him about the game. It was hard to describe. And I was like, okay, yeah, you could start a game on it. Just don't save over or play over my game. Anyway, so I go and put my 4-year-old nephew down. 30 minutes later, I come out and he's playing Destiny. I was like, what happened? He's like, it's too hard. I raged. He said there are no words and it's all pictures and it's hard to figure out, and it really is. It's a very abstract and obscure story, and the artwork. I know you've seen the artwork, right? It's a beautiful game.
It's the same people that did Bastion, right?
No, it's a completely different studio. Yeah.
What did Bastion? What other game did they
Transistor.
do? And you were playing that, and that's what threw me off.
Yeah. Transistor's fun. I only played that for a little bit. I do have that on my iPad, and that's on my list of stuff to play too. But yeah, it's such a cool. I'd probably describing it incorrectly, but I think of it as like a 2.5D environment where you are on a 2D landscape, but there are 3D elements to it, like going upstairs that are also in line with the flat landscape and that sort of thing. Yeah. And the way that stuff scales. And But yeah, it's any interaction that you have with any people is all they're showing pictures that come up above them, and they show you story, like they tell you stories in that way
Gotcha.
instead of telling you or talking to you. Um, it's like the character starts off and he's being affected by some sickness or illness that has to do with some darkness. And I mean, it sounds like Destiny, but anyway, I think it's modeled. I think the creator of it, the designer, he has heart disease or he has some sort of heart condition. I think it's modeled after that. But anyway, it's so fun, man. And you and I were talking about this a couple months back whenever we started getting going again on the podcast about. I can't remember what you were playing, but we were talking. It might have been Gears of War actually. So when we were talking about what difficulty you play on,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't think this one has difficulties, but it is hard. But like I was saying, it's just as fulfilling because
It's just like Meat or yeah, like Super Meat Boy and stuff like that, where it's just very mechanically driven.
yeah,
And,
dude,
yeah,
it's like it plays a lot like Zelda. The way that it gets described as Zelda meets Diablo because you're playing sort of a dungeon crawler type game, but you're also it's really set up like Zelda is, and like A Link to the Past, not Ocarina of Time. So yeah, it's whenever you first get in there, the first dungeons or the first few areas that you go through, you encounter an enemy type. Okay, cool. I figured out how to beat this enemy type. You go into the next room, there's another different enemy type. As soon as you finish that one, like four more different enemy types come into the room, and you're dashing across the screen. You have a sword at that point. I don't think you might have your gun at that point, but essentially you have a sword and a gun and different variations on that, just like you would with Zelda. But yeah, it's the second boss battle had me. It took me like 30 minutes to beat. It was frustratingly hard, but it was so fun because
nice.
yeah, just got to teach yourself patience again. But anyway, it's definitely worth the buy. I don't know if it's still on sale on Xbox on Xbox.com or whatever on Xbox Live, but on Steam it's still only like $11.99 if you guys are interested in it. I mean, for that cheap.
Yeah,
I mean, I think on average, just completing the game is around 10 hours, 9 hours, something like that, and then completionist is something like 26 hours or some shit like that.
wow.
Probably a lot like Guacamelee was, where
Yeah.
you could have beat the story pretty easily. Yeah, I think I was telling you earlier, some of the achievements on there are silly. Like one is beat the entire game without dying. It's like I don't understand how people could do that because it is horribly frustrating at times, but it's good, man. It's really good.
So you mentioned it, Gears of War. We both played a little bit of that over the past couple of weeks. Finally, both of us got on the multiplayer some. Another new game type introduced in that with Arms Race, just like gun game from Black Ops.
Dude, but like team deathmatch gun game is so fun.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It's so cool the way that they did that too, because it's not just a clone of Counter-Strike like Call of Duty did.
Yeah.
It's
well,
fun,
it's also
man.
they have different weapon types, unlike what Call of Duty did too. Like
Yeah,
Call of
so
Duty,
you're
I
shooting
think you had to
bullets.
go through like 27 guns, which included 5 SMGs and 3 LMGs. Like you're pretty much shooting the same.
Guess
It's
what?
like,
They all shoot bullets. Yeah.
yeah, it's like every single gun in Gears is a different gun type entirely. So I really, really enjoyed that game type a lot. I haven't gone back to the campaign yet. It's on my list of things to do, but that's been a blast playing the multiplayer in that. I've missed that game so much.
Yeah, you and me both, dude. And I think one of the coolest things about it, not to mention there's another game type, a new game type that is so fun, is dodgeball.
Oh yeah.
Dodgeball is so cool, man. I think that's what makes that game so much fun is that, first of all, it's challenging.
Right.
But then secondly, the mechanics of all the guns are completely different.
Yeah.
There's not a single gun in the game that fires like another gun.
Right.
Let alone you have power weapons on the board that from round to round are going to be completely different. Whether it's torque bow, which is still personally my favorite gun and probably the only power weapon I'm any good with. But then you go torque bow and then the next round it's a drop shot. And drop shot's completely different. That is the hardest. That's one of the hardest guns to use in that game for me. And I don't know. It's so fun. But then having that mix of playlist or what is it called? The social playlist, right? Yeah. Where it's just you guys vote on different game types and give different maps to play, and it keeps it fresh.
Titanfall does that as well. I really like that games are doing that, where it mixes up the game types from game to game, and you're not locked into playing one game type. And every game's going to be different. I really like that. Only thing I don't like about it with Gears is that you're locked into having only 2 people. There's a couple of things I don't like about Gears currently, which is at least on the matchmaking side of things, the social playlist. You can only have a party of 2 people.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know that.
That's why me, you, and Daniel couldn't do it, which is really frustrating.
Oh, I could see why though. I could see why, because let's say 4 of us get into a game, we're going to be able to like completely rig the voting.
I get that, but at the same time, the ranked playlist, I don't know why there's not a ranked social playlist like that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know why there's not a ranked matchmaking lobby. Like, why do I have to, at the end of the game, you have to back out to the main menu. Everybody has to back out to the main menu, and then you start matchmaking it again. No game have I played online since I started playing online games force you to go back out to a lobby to start matchmaking again. It just automatically goes to the next game. It just does that. That's really weird to me. I don't know why that happens.
I don't know if anybody's making a fuss out of it outside of us, but I imagine that that's something that's going to be fixed. I don't know if that was by design.
I don't either. It drives me insane, though, because then you can't even do it until everybody's backed out. And so it's like, the other night we played with my cousin who didn't have a mic, and he would be in there and not paying attention. And because it's easy to just forget to back out. And so it's like, I can't matchmake until everyone backs out, which is really frustrating.
No, I agree with you completely. I am entirely on board with them fixing that, because that's the part of, I mean, that works so well with all the other games, right? If you're in a fire team, I'd say fire team because of how much we play Destiny, but if you're in a fire team or a group, you should be transporting with your host or your leader or whatever, or you should be transitioning through games with that person. I mean, that's the whole point of social gaming.
Talking about it now, I guess I can understand parts of it. One of the frustrating parts about it is if you're in a ranked game type, which this is also frustrating, is that if 2 or 3 people quit, they don't put in new players in their place. Only in social matchmaking do they.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which is really frustrating. But the flip side of that is, can you imagine being in a ranked game and it's constantly matchmaking and you've just got somebody AFK piggybacking off of your wins while you're putting in all the work? So by forcing you to back out, it has to switch up the lobbies, basically. But I don't know. I mean, they could easily do something like what Destiny does, where it's like if you don't play, you get kicked. And I actually think Gears does that at a certain time.
They do, because
that's right. You got kicked.
Yeah, I did, because we were playing against one guy at a certain point, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to let you guys kill him, because I don't know if I was tired or whatever I was doing at the time, but it's like, there's really no point in all 6 of us chasing this guy down. Yeah, so that's really dumb. There's some things that need to be updated on that for sure, but nonetheless, I'm still really digging that. Wow, it was the first time in a while that I've played a game. Well, granted, I really didn't play it at launch, but a game this early and this big did not have issues with its servers or have issues with any sort of launch mechanics.
I just love that. It's the perfect time of year to get into playing new games all around, because it's the holiday season and everybody's picking up these games that have come out over the past couple of months now that the prices are dropping. So it's really, really fun, because I don't feel like I'm up against the wall where I'm playing against people that have been playing for a year and I'm just getting stomped every game. Like, it feels competitive and fun. You know, some games you're going to lose and you're going to lose bad, but more times than not, it's at least competitive, which is enjoyable.
Yeah, which is the exact opposite of what Destiny is now. So, it's a fantastic game. Again, I mean, you and I have been playing Gears of War for, what has it been, 10 years at this point almost?
Yeah,
it has been 10 years, yeah. Exactly, yeah. No, it's been great. So but also you say that it's a great time for people to get into games, but for people who play a lot of games, it's also, at least for me anyways, it's frustrating because I don't know what I should buy, and I don't know what I would actually dedicate time to, and there are too many options. Sometimes it's overwhelming. I talk about that. The tyranny of choice is sometimes a little too much and can be overwhelming, because you have those things sitting in your inventory and you're like, okay, I need to play one of these, and then you spend time trying to figure out. It's just like whenever you load up Netflix.
Yeah.
I feel like I spend more time trying to find something to watch on Netflix than I do actually watching something.
Yep. Well, and to add on to that, so that's what 3 games now that we're playing. Haven't even talked about the 4th, which I've been playing extensively, which is Pokemon Moon.
Yeah, that was next. That was next on my list to ask you about because um, Brad, who I referenced earlier, who's been on the show before, and he and Troy do a podcast called VGCast. But he was posting, I want to say it was on Facebook, and he was saying, "All right, I have a really unpopular opinion, and I hope it's probably going to offend you, but Pokemon Sun and Moon are better than Blue and Red."
I don't know. I will agree with that to an extent. I don't think you can ever really beat the original 150 as far as like just the Pokemon in general. I don't think that so far the ones that I've caught are
I think he was just referencing the game itself.
No, and that's what I was going to say. From a game standpoint, the quality of life improvement, like this is the perfect game for people that have been out of playing Pokemon and I know a lot of people our age, a lot of people our age that may have played Heart Gold and Soul Silver whenever it released, or even just Gold and Silver whenever it came out, but really just kind of lost gens 3 through 6. So, or 3 through 7, 3 through 6, 7.
I think it's on 7 right now. Yeah.
This is the perfect jumping on point, and it's all quality of life improvements. It's not like Pokemon to me isn't a game where I'm just like, God, why don't they do this? Like I am with Gears of War and stuff like that, like we were just talking about. But there are things that have always just sort of annoyed or baffled me subconsciously that they've done in this game that are really, really welcomed additions to the game. So a couple of them for people. So first of all, the actual Pokedex is great. It's a perfect, like I said, a perfect jumping on point. It's just a hybrid between, it's a really heavily Kanto weighted Pokedex, and then it's got all the new in the Aloha region, and then it's got some others from the other generations peppered throughout it. But the map system has been updated, so that was one of my biggest complaints about Pokemon, that I'm like, why hasn't this been the one thing that I have repeatedly said, which is why doesn't this exist? In that if I put down Pokemon for 2 months and come back to it, I don't know where the fuck I need to go.
Yeah.
I don't know what any of the towns are. I don't know where I need to go. All that they did was just, first of all, the map is really intuitive. You can zoom in and out of every single island, and each place tells you what the major things are at each island, which I think, now that I think about it, I think Black and White had that too. But there's also an icon that just is a waypoint for the next thing that you need to go do. It's just a little flag, and you can go there. Completely got rid of HMs, which is something that I never even fathomed, but that was always frustrating to me, is having to teach cut or fly or surf to Pokemon that you wanted to use, and you have to waste a move. And it's, I mean, especially cut. Like, cut is a huge wasted move. Surf, I can maybe get on board with.
Surf and fly were pretty badass.
Yeah, I can. But it's cool though, because they've made those TMs now, and you can use TMs over and over as much as you want to, which is great.
Oh, that's cool. They changed that, huh?
Yeah, but so in order of getting rid of the HMs, there's still points of the maps that you can't access, and so now you just unlock those Pokemon throughout the game that you can actually ride, and it actually shows, like, you actually ride a Tauros, or you ride a Lapras, or you call Charizard and fly to a particular part, which is really cool. Another thing, whenever you catch that 7th Pokemon, if you got 6 in your inventory, it automatically always went to the box. So then you had to go all the way back to a Pokemon Center, go to the PC, pull them out of the box.
Please tell me you have the option to switch them out with one of yours.
There's a fucking option now to where whenever you catch it, it says add to party or send a box. And then another awesome part about that is if you add it to your party and send something from your party to your box, which you obviously get to pick which one you send to your box, if the Pokemon you send to your box is holding an item, it actually prompts you to take the item from the Pokemon rather than sending it to the PC.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
You're not just subconsciously, or you're not just passively sending a Pokemon to the box with an item that you want to give to something else, which is really cool. And then another big thing of note is super effective and not effective attacks, where either, like, a lot of them I've just memorized over the years, that, and a lot of them are pretty straightforward. You know, fire is strong against grass, vice versa. Grass is weak against fire, grass is strong against water, water is strong against fire, all those things. But then whenever you start getting into the other ones like dragon is super effective against dragon.
And what is it? Ice is good against dragon. Fighting is good against psychic. Psychic doesn't work against normal.
Yeah, so there's
Ghost is good against psychic.
Yeah. All of like fighting. I don't think fighting can hit ghost. Like all those different things.
Normal can't hit ghost either.
Yeah. So all of those different things. Basically, the first time you battle against a new Pokemon that you haven't seen or battled before, all of your moves that you select look like they would normally, where there's nothing other than just the attack, how much PP you have left, and all that. After you've either caught or battled a Pokemon, the next time you see it and it's registered in your Pokedex, just below the attack it says super effective, not effective, or effective.
That's cool.
Based on the type of Pokemon, which makes sense. Like that's what the Pokedex is supposed to be for. Like, you should be able to remember. Yeah, exactly. Like I fucking love that so much. The other big thing is it used to be that only if you caught something and it was registered in your Pokedex would it show you the habitat where it's located at. So now even if you see something that you've battled somebody with, like if I've battled you and you had a Pokemon that I hadn't seen before, I can look at it in my Pokedex and it'll say the habitat where I can go catch it at. So I really like that too.
I feel like that's a little cheap though.
The flip side to that is A, you don't have to do that. B, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go look it up online anyway. So
yeah, that's true. It does cut out the step of going to Cerebi.net or whatever.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I would do is if I want, and a lot of that is a guessing game where I don't want to know every little thing, but it's like, I also don't want to deal with shitty Pokemon for all the way up until the end of the game either.
I'd like whatever. I could take a Zigzagoon all the way to the Elite Four. I don't care.
So you'll really like Gumshoes then, because that's the new Zigzagoon.
Oh, yeah. That's the new. Oh god, I already forgot what it was called from Gold and Silver. The flying squirrel. What was that thing called? Flying squirrel. Oh, it was one of the first Pokemon that you go up against.
I don't remember.
It'll come to me.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, I am loving everything about Pokemon Moon, and to completely agree with Brad from that standpoint, like from a gameplay perspective and a mechanic perspective, especially from somebody that's been playing it for 15 or 20 years, whatever it's been now, the advancements that they've made in it are much like super welcome changes. So I'm a big fan of all of that. However, I think Gold and Silver were the only other competitors, and even then, I don't think that they really topped the first 150. But the first 150 and the second gen, the first two gens will always be my favorites in my opinion.
But for me, by default, Gold and Silver are better than Blue and Red because you get to do both continents, right?
Right.
But I guess the main thing. So Gold and Silver are better as a game and mechanically because inherently, as you go further along, and improvements like all the improvements that you're talking about in Sun and Moon are. I mean, it's a better machine at that point. But it is about the contents. But with Gold and Silver, I guess the only drawback is that they had the second best starters of all time as opposed to the best starters of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
Where, I think that, to me, I can't say that. I was going to say that for Alligator rivals Blastoise, but I really can't.
I could say that. I think looks-wise, at least, I think for Alligator looks... I could say that, yeah, I think that for Alligator...
But they're the exact same... prototypes, right? You have the little crocodile that's just like the little Squirtle. You have the Croconaw that looks like an adolescent that looks like he's going through puberty, just like Wartortle. Yeah. But we can all agree the grass types kind of suck, right?
I won't. I hope Amber doesn't listen to this.
I'm just kidding.
You'll say Meganium is the best Pokemon that's ever existed.
Oh my god! I would take Venusaur over 90% of starters, though.
What?
Not 90% of starters, but a lot of them. I think a nostalgia factor. I think I've told you before. So we were talking about, birthdays, right? I think we were talking about birthdays, right? A couple episodes back or a couple months back, maybe. Well, like your most memorable birthday story or whatever.
Yeah.
But before I got Pokemon Blue, I had been playing on an emulator for 100 hours or whatever it was, and my starter was Bulbasaur because I didn't know any better at the time. So I'm still kind of stuck in. But I would take those three over almost any of them. I mean, they really started getting uninspired at a certain point.
They did.
There are only so many animals you can model fake animals after, right?
Right, and that's the other thing is that you start seeing, and that's what's really cool about Sun and Moon is that they took that and flipped it on its head in that the Kanto versions got new forms in this game. So Rattata, which everybody hates, got a new form, which is kind of cool. Like you still hate it, but at least it looks kind of different.
But I will say my all-time favorite Pokemon has a new form, right? Alola Alakazam.
Did they get one? I can't even remember.
Psychic and fighting, right?
I thought that one was fake. I don't know that was actually real. I know that Marowak got a new form, which I'm super excited about.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Alolan and Alakazam is just fan art. Damn
yeah.
Oh, dude, that would have been so amazing.
You need to look up, if you're looking that up, you need to look up Pokemon Moon Gengar, because some fan made a really cool Ghastly Haunter and Gengar Alolan form, which was really cool looking. That was like a sort of witch doctor version of them, essentially. It was really neat.
Whoa. Like, hold on. I can't share my screen, but like he has purple hair and like a wand and stuff.
I don't know if that was it.
I see like an actual dude who looks like a witch doctor. But then there's also this thing. So the Pokemon I was referencing earlier is Sentret.
Oh, yeah.
Which is funny because this, I don't want to share my screen, and people listening on the podcast won't be able to see it anyway. But there is a Gengar fan art that looks like he's got gray hair and he looks like a Furret almost, or a Sentret. He's like kind of brownish and has a long tail and it's gold and all this stuff. But
oh no, it wasn't. Well, I guess it is kind of Witch Doctor, but they basically made the Ghastly and Haunter look like dream catchers. I actually this is really unfun. And then Gengar looked like a Tiki Gengar, basically. Like
interesting.
A Alolan form. I just texted it to you. The listeners can't hear any of this. Go check it out. The fan art for the Alolan forms were really
It's just like listening to the Joe Rogan podcast where they're pulling stuff up on the TV. Hey, pull that up on the TV. It's like, I'm not going to watch this. I'm not going to sit and watch for 3 hours. One day we need to sit and do a 3 hour. We need to switch this to 3 hours a day.
Oh,
every weekday. We could definitely fill up the time with that.
So speaking of watching and listening, we actually got some new albums by an album release and an album announcement by a couple of people that we really like to listen to, one of which I've loved to hate listening to more than not recently. Which you're
in absolutely one of the two camps that I've seen on the internet.
Which
is you either absolutely love it or you think it's a garbage fire. Yeah.
So Childish Gambino came out with a new...
I still refuse to call him that. His name is Donald Glover.
Came out with a new album, Awaken My Love, which I hate and cannot make any excuses for outside of like one or two tracks. I get it. If you want to put it under the guise of artistic expression, I'm all for musicians branching out and experimenting with new sounds. I am just under the belief that if you're going to do that, at least do it justice. And I do not think, like, I'm totally on board with a funkadelic, psychedelic sort of Jimi Hendrix meets soul disco album by Donald Glover. I think he's talented enough to do such a thing if done right, but I don't think that he did that right at all. I will say that Redbone, I dig that song, and I wish that more of the album kind of followed that, but California is the worst thing I've ever listened to in my entire life, and I will stand by that.
You are just too extreme.
How so?
So, I don't enjoy it either. I will say that. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard. It's also, I think you and I had this discussion, and I really want to revisit this in 6 months.
I've revisited it several times over the weekend.
No. See, that's not enough. That is not enough time to put aside your biases and your predispositions to what something is.
But I didn't have a bias towards it. I went into it after hearing the signal that came out and saying, okay, so this isn't like we've known that coming out since the Stone Mountain mixtape, that it's not going to be that he hasn't put out a classic hip hop track since
because the
internet. And even then,
that was still disappointing.
In there, so I knew going into this it wasn't going to be a hip hop album, and I was okay with it. And I was willing to take that journey with him. It was not a good one. It was not good.
It's not good. It's not good. But what I'm saying is, I give it a few months.
Okay, you can say I'm being extreme. That California, it may not be the worst thing. It's definitely top 5.
I've heard some bad music. I don't know, man. It's
dude, it's bad. It's just so bad, man. I mean,
this is the time I can't wait until I get a mixer and a couple microphones, because we'll be able to start piping music in like that and actually be able to like go through that stuff.
And I get it. I get what he was trying to do or what the intent was. And that's the thing that's more frustrating than anything, is that I can hear what the intent was. It's just the delivery that's so disappointing, and to see it work sporadically throughout the album, but overall as an entire project, it's just a failure for me.
I agree with you completely. It is an overreach. Well, the thing that's his nature, though, I guess, is that you should look at this in the same way you should look at any of the transitions that he's made throughout his career. And I think a lot of it has to do with ego. I personally think the guy is a hilarious person. I think that he's a great writer. When he was on 30 Rock, 30 Rock was hilarious. I think that he was really funny as Troy on Community.
Atlanta's fantastic.
He's my least favorite part of that show, but
his role on the show is great.
His creation of the other characters is great.
Well, that's what I'm saying. His role on the show, like
because he does
his character role, his role in the creation of the show.
It's crazy to me that he creates such progressive and out of the box characters like Paperboy and Darius, but falls into the trap of just making I'll say cliche or tropolicious character like Ern.
Yeah.
That is just completely uninspired. But he does this though, right? Because when was the last time he did comedy, right?
Well, it's just funny. Like, look at the transition that he's made since Derek Comedy to was it Derek Comedy?
Yeah, he was in Derek Comedy. Him and Bobby Moynihan.
Yeah. Derek Comedy and the YouTube videos that they put out up until Awaken My Love and the person that he is now.
Right, but I think if you go back and you're studying the behavior, if you look at it from, I'm going to sound like a complete idiot, but if you look at it from like just I don't know if that would be sociological or psychological standpoint, but you look at the behaviors, it is not necessarily unpredictable, and it is almost expected if you, and I know hindsight's 2020, but you think about it, the transition, Derek Comedy, okay, natural transition to 30 Rock, okay, natural transition to going back to acting and doing Community. And then once he gets a little taste of success whenever he released Freaks and Geeks, and you realize people are on board with it, if nothing else than being shocked by the fact that the guy can actually rap, and he puts out some rap albums, and people really enjoy those for what they are.
Can I also say that I am hugely disappointed that he acts as though, I don't know if it's him necessarily, but music streaming as a whole, and I guess the music community as a whole, because they say Awaken My Love is his 4th album, like that they just scrapped that EP altogether from the history books on all streaming services that had Freaks and Geeks and
did it have Cul-de-Sac?
White Girls and all those other stuff.
Yeah,
like, and Cul-de-sac, like they just scrapped that from his discography entirely.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
Really frustrating.
So he's naturally, so you look at it, Derek Comedy to 30 Rock to Community, that's natural transition from comedy to writing, back to comedy. gets a little taste of a success doing something else that he enjoys. No doubt he enjoys doing it because why else would he do it? But that gets so deeply embedded in his head that it becomes maybe at the forefront, and then he starts being solely a musical act. And then he's done some serious acting, really, albeit I didn't watch Magic Mike, either of the Magic Mike movies.
I didn't even know he was in that.
He was in the second Magic Mike movie, which I thought was kind of funny and odd that he was in that cast. And then he was in The Martian. He played
the scientist.
The guy, Rich Parnell.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, he put out those. Well, I guess in between that, because the internet to me was a huge disappointment too. By the way,
I've gone back to that, and I think
there's 4 songs on there.
Right. I think I can justify maybe half of it. Yeah. Absolutely. But I stand by the fact that it's not, as a whole, I haven't revisited it as regularly as some other hip hop albums that I listen to.
But you think about it, his success in comedy, I think, to me, psychologically, I think of that as, okay, I've reached a point where I feel like I have achieved everything that I'm going to achieve, where I'm at a level of success where I don't have to prove anything to anybody, and I want to go on to a different challenge because I'm starting to get buzz in that. Okay, so I'm doing rap, or hip hop, whatever, and he's put out a couple albums that are I wouldn't say critically acclaimed, they have cult followings.
And I think Camp had a huge, I think it's unanimously well reviewed.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, it's more of a cult following than a mainstream thing. So he gets that success, and then he's like, okay, I don't need to prove that to anybody anymore. So I'm going to go on to do this other thing. So that becomes whatever, the fucking Kawhi Stone Mountain mixtapes, which were terrible, which was his attempt at, I think, doing trap music on one of those mixtapes. I can't remember which one of the split it was. And then moving on to the next portion, doing Atlanta, which was his attempt to write, direct, and act himself in a story about his hometown, which is a successful show. I think we've talked about it. I don't like a lot of the tropes and kind of the derivative material it falls into, but the traps. And now he's like, okay, musically, I want to go back to making music, but I don't want to. I've already proven myself as being a hip hop artist. I want to try my hand at soul and funk, and for the first time he has fallen flat on his face, I think.
But that's the thing, is that it's like not it'd be different if he did the soul and funk, because like I said, I think Redbone is really successful, and
I think I honestly kind of like the Boogeyman. I think I can get down on that song.
It's a very Prince sounding song, and had he done an album but it came across as me as somebody that couldn't make up their mind on what they wanted that album to be, and didn't put in the time and effort for it to be any of those things. And as a result, it comes out as this hodgepodge of half attempts. And Redbone was the one that seemed like a complete package, whereas California, even though I hate it, it's more so that I hate the vocals and I hate the lyrics, but the instrumental's actually pretty dope. I like that sort of tiki bar sound beat that he put together, and it sounds okay, but it's all the other things that just don't do it justice. And I get it, wanting to do this sort of West Coast tropical sounding song, but it just doesn't get the attention or respect that I think it deserved. And like I said, the whole album I was so frustrated.
Knowing him, though, how much of that do you think is intentionally disjointed?
Well, that's the thing, is it's he gets the benefit of being an artist because he does so many things that you can post-rationalize it as being intentional, whenever I just think it's just shit, and that you're surrounded by people that are yes men that are going to say, yeah, that sounds awesome, dude. Put that on a track and put it out there because it's going to fucking sell no matter what.
Yeah, it's yeah, you're right. I think he probably does have a bunch of people that are just chirping in his ear that are saying, that I personally have not heard something that's like this. That's cool. Do something different. I think people will enjoy it and it will resonate because it sounds different. But it really is a lot of it, to use that word again, which I kind of actually hate using the word derivative, but a lot of it is derivative of 70s stuff. And it's
not a bad sound. I mean, when done right, Bruno Mars does that sound right.
Yeah, for sure.
And is really, really good at it. And there's a reason why it's so successful. But it's because he does the time and effort and the justice that genre deserves that I don't think Awaken My Love ever really delivers on. And that's what's frustrating. It's not that it's different. It's not that it's not what I expected. It's not that one song is bad. It's that despite everything that I was willing to go along with, it just is a huge disappointment. And that's from somebody that I genuinely want to like things. I will make excuses to like things more times than not, and I just cannot do it with this album. And it's so frustrating in that I know, like you just said, how much of it was intentional. I think a lot of that's going to get pawned off as being intentional rather than somebody like, it's like Kanye's album. Like, how much of that shit was intentional? Well, even if it's shit, they get to a level of success where people automatically assume it's intentional and therefore think that it's actually good whenever they just can say that it's not. And so as a result of that, it just encourages them to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree with you completely. But a lot of times for people to realize that they're too full of themselves, or that they've taken a wrong path, or that they've taken an easy path, in this case, maybe, in a lazy path, is to fall flat on your face. And maybe that will be, I don't know. I don't know that the guy is.
I don't think he will. I saw Rolling Stone gave it like 4.5 stars.
Out of 5?
Yes.
Get the fuck out of here.
I was fucking floored.
Which is hilarious because the other huge publication that you sent me was USA Today, and they gave it a 0.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
But that's, again, just to reiterate, I honestly, Rolling Stone is beyond pretentious with a lot of that stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think it's a lot of it is just, oh, this is so different. It's so cool. Like, what do you judge it on? What do you base it off of? What is your judging criteria for something if you don't have any sort of semblance of any contemporary material to place it up against? You really don't have that. And I guess in either way you could say, well, he really is breaking the mold, when, just because you break the mold doesn't mean you do it in a good way. Whereas USA Today, I think it was that whenever the quote was something along the lines of, even his backing band doesn't seem to be up to snuff to accomplish the things that he wants to accomplish in these songs.
Yeah. So Metacritic's got it as an 81 right now with a user score of 8.5. And all of the stuff that we're saying, like the AV Club, like this is the issue, is that, just the top headline is what we we're just talking about. He's Donald Glover, a man who can perform and write comedy, act in a drama, and drop a truly wonderful album on short notice with all the influences and instructions spelled out. It's like, oh, because he can do all these things, that must mean that this is really good. Like, that's the way that comes across to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then you take a more level-headed approach from a publication pretty much amazing, which is more geared towards just hip-hop and R&B, and they gave them a 58 out of 100, saying it's simultaneously daunting, exhausting, terrifying, all at the same time. It's a lot to take in with not a whole lot of the Gambino we are familiar with to help wash it down. So that brings me to another question. Let's go ahead and throw out the whole revisit in 6 months. I know that you're not in that camp where I'm not going to convince you to do that, but
I'm going to.
But if he were to, and this brings up another point, if he were to attach a different name to it other than Childish Gambino, would it be less poorly received on your part?
No.
Okay. But I feel like with that, from Pretty Much Amazing saying that, is that some people feel that it's
because they're expecting Gambino.
Yeah,
and it's a Gambino album, and they're not getting that.
Exactly. I get that. It's like whenever a big band is really just their one starting member at this point, it's like, why didn't they just rename themselves? And they sound different. It's very few bands have been able to do that, right? Like Under Oath, they excelled past what they were whenever they lost pretty much every member except for one or two, and they changed their sound completely. They could have changed their name and gone down a different path, but I mean, they leveraged some cult name recognition, but there are plenty of examples of bands that just kind of fell flat on their face when people were just like, "What is this?" And it's just,
Yeah.
even to the extent of something like, I don't know how much you listen to them, but Bring Me the Horizon, and it's just like, if you're
Well,
going to
so
change your sound that much, I feel like maybe you
so
should.
here's the flip side to that is, I mean, how much of the, I mean, like you said, that review that you just read very, very clearly had the makings of someone that was expecting a Gambino album and got something different, versus the review that I read, which was Donald Glover as a person can do all of these things, so it must be good. Like how much of this is just going to also be tainted by the fact that he has been successful in all these other avenues? And you see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like you're not going to ever really get a historical precedent for what this is, because he is such a dynamic person, and people are going to, like, no matter what he puts out, people are going to love it because it's him, you know?
Yeah, I agree. But it's funny, I'm reading some of the user things, and some guy gave it a 0. He said, "I hope some bars in this album, but hell no. WTF is this album. Even his singing is bad. Why the hell people can love this trash? Just disappointed of this album." Which is so poorly written, but I think it's the same reaction that you had. My coworker Sean had. He came in. He's like, "I just listened to that on the way in." It's like, yeah, I was hoping at some point he would start rapping, but nope. But that it brings another point. We're talking about his singing. Is his singing's not bad on some of the older stuff that he's done, but he did singing in the hooks. He didn't do it as the meat of the songs.
And I don't think he has the range to do it as the meat of songs. I mean, and that's the thing, is like, ultimately, an artist that takes risks and does these sorts of experiments, the thing that makes it artistic is having the self-awareness to know when something's bad, to not put your name on it in a lot of ways, and knowing your limitations as an artist. And I don't get, like, I'd like to hear what the B-sides are from this.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because B-sides was something that I was thinking about pretty heavily this weekend, and it's a perfect segue from that. In that, I was listening to, again, I don't think it's something that you're really, I mean, admittedly you couldn't get into, but Low Teens by Every Time I Die. It's, I think, my favorite album of the year. I think I've come to finally settle down. Dust has settled. All the newness of everything is worn off. But sorry, I have an itchy nose, driving me nuts. So one of the things is they released 2 tracks on the deluxe edition, which are fantastic songs, but and I don't know about personally why they left them out or why they didn't put them in there. Maybe because they already had 11, 12 songs on the album, but they don't fit the theme. They don't fit the mood. They're every bit an Every Time I Die song as anything else on that album, but they don't fit the theme of that album. They don't fit. It just doesn't fit
Thematically.
Yeah, thematically. I hate to keep using that word, but and I wonder if that was the case. Whereas we were just talking about how you can have a whole album where it seems like you're throwing in nothing but B-sides.
Yeah.
And it does seem almost lazy in that. And I think that a lot of bands, like I was saying, I mean, you could have every bit as much genuine, what am I trying to say? Not recognition, but it could sound every bit of as your sound as any other song on that album, but it doesn't have to be on that album. It's the reason why certain bands break stuff up. And another good example of that is whenever Circus Survive released, and this is a more extreme example, it's not even B-sides. It's releasing a whole new EP because they did Blue Sky Noise, and then they had recorded, I think, 4 or 5 songs, and these really don't fit with what we're doing, so we're going to release them as an EP, which ended up becoming, I think, Appendage is what it was called. Mm-hmm. Fantastic songs, great songs. Every bit as Circus Survive as anything on Blue Sky Noise, but just belonged somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting. I think that's very conscious and conscientious of them to recognize that they need to separate material.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, even though I didn't like Awaken My Love, I don't want that to reflect any... I love Donald Glover. I loved everything, all of his other albums, even like I said, because the internet's probably his weakest. But um, for me personally, I still enjoyed at least half of that album. I don't think that he's acted in anything that I didn't like. Um, he's been a part of a lot of things that I do like. I think what he's trying to do with music and message is really important for people that have fallen into cliche categories. I mean, because the internet, even though the album wasn't successful, what it did and what it stood for, I thought was really innovative that a lot of people weren't doing, and that he put together a screenplay that accompanied the album that the album went along to, which I thought was really interesting. And what he's doing with Awaken My Love, even though I don't understand it or know what it's going to do exactly, he's got some sort of virtual reality record release that's going to come out with it. I don't know what that entails, and nobody really does. I think he's working on some cool things that are starting to kind of break the mold, but from a music standpoint, like I said, I just couldn't get behind it. It's disappointing.
Yeah.
But
so let's get that bad taste out of our mouths. We have a little bit of time left, and I know we've beaten. I don't know. We didn't beat a dead horse, but we really did let him have it. We'll back off a little bit because we know he's going to listen to this. So, what what good have you been listening to? You referenced another release.
Yeah, so not a release that's out yet, but one I listened to one song off of it because it was in the Gears of War trailer, which we had mentioned, and I've purposely avoided the rest of them because I feel like records lately have become like movie trailers, in that bands will release half the album before the album actually comes out. We finally got a release date for Run the Jewels 3, January 13th. So really excited for that. That'll be a week before we go see him on the 21st. So that'll be a blast. So yeah, I cannot wait for that. I'm really, really anticipating that. So
they've actually released, I think, 2 songs at this point, right?
I think they've released like 3.
They released Talk to Me 2100, I think was the name of one of the songs, which is funny. I think one of them they released over on Adult Swim, which I think is kind of great.
Yeah.
And then Legend Has It came out on Friday, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm super excited about that show too. And we're going to 10-year anniversary playing of On Let It Go. Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Yep. And so there are a couple albums. Is there anything else you've been listening to that?
Hamilton mixtape came out. So it's hit or miss, but kind of interesting. Lin-Manuel got a bunch of rappers and stuff to do their takes on some of the songs from the Hamilton soundtrack. So that's been fun to listen to. Like the Roots did a version of one of the songs.
Oh, that's cool.
Regina Spektor did a version of a song. And so some of them are really big. Usher did a version of a song. A couple of them are like really big misses, but some of them are pretty neat. So that just came out recently. So I like listened to that once through today, but other than that, more of the same for the most part.
Yeah. I came across a revelation. This is going to sound really stupid, but so doing online dating is one of the things that sometimes they'll match up it'll let you know if you match with certain like interests on Facebook, things you like. So I was going through, because music's a really important thing to me. And I went through and I realized I wasn't following or liking majority of the bands that I like on Facebook. So I started going through and click, adding them like the Brownie Monsters. And I get to the point where I realize, have you ever listened to the band Gallows?
I don't think I have.
Okay. Well, British punk hardcore band, they were pretty fantastic. They've put out a few new albums the past couple of years, but they have a different singer. So you listen to Alexis on Fire, right?
Yep.
So one of their guitarists, Wade McNeil, he is now the singer of Gallows. And then the guy that got ousted, Frank Carter, who I'd have to show you a picture of him. He's a scary looking dude. He's really frail, not frail, but he's really skinny ginger dude that has this huge, it's a non-Nazi eagle, like this huge eagle tattoo on his chest. Like he's tatted up around his neck. So he looks like a dude you would not mess with. But anyway, I found out that he is in a new hardcore punk band called Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, and Dude, I'm very happy. I will say that. So I queued up their stuff today, and it's just as every bit as aggressive and angry and cathartic to listen to as the old Gallows stuff. And I think he has some new stuff, or they have some. That's one thing. It feels kind of weird listening to. It almost seems egotistical for a band to be called the dude's name and then whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I guess at that point, he has enough name recognition in the hardcore and punk community that it might not be a bad thing. But yeah, I've been listening to that today, and then I've been listening to a lot of. I mean, I feel like we need to do a whole separate episode with kind of our end of the year top albums and that sort of thing. But another band that just along those same lines as Frank Carter that I didn't realize was back together putting out new music is a band called Boys Night Out. Again, I don't know if you listen to them at all, but they're kind of think about like back in the day, think about like Secret Lives, but without any sort of screaming.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so they put out a new album this year. I didn't realize it's fucking awesome. And then, yeah, and then Pacific Myth. You need to check that out. The Protest the Hero finally released their subscription, the collection of their subscription model in streaming. So
Nice.
you can go and listen to that. They have, I think it's 6 tracks, and then they have 6 instrumental tracks to go along with it afterwards. And I'm so excited. I'm hoping I can talk you into going to that show with me. Wait,
I take that back. I have been listening to something. I listened to that CHON stuff.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I was a big fan of that.
Yeah, so they're fun band too, dude. So I found myself listening to that, and then also Strawberry Girls a ton because I thought it was so cool. The Strawberry Girls, which if you guys have never listened to them, there's a guy Zach Guerin who was a guitarist for Dance Gavin Dance at one point. Amazing guitarist. Him and 2 other guys whose names escape me because I really started listening to them because of Zach. But they have this like funky kind of math rock / actually I'd say it's less math and just more funky instrumental group. And they're just all at the top of their game in terms of instrumentation. And I was listening to them a lot because you and I talk about that a good bit, the way what we listen to at work or whenever we actually need to focus on a task at hand. It's better to have that instrumental music playing in the background. But anyway, going from that and then listening to CHON, I think them and those 2 and then Polyphia, I think probably resonate more with me in terms of instrumental groups than something like I like Explosions in the Sky, but there are very few times that I actually go and seek that out.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like because it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't convey enough. It's not upbeat enough for me to listen to on a normal basis. But yeah, CHON's pretty great. It's funny. I was watching videos. I want to say it was at South by Southwest, and I was watching CHON perform on one of my addictions, which is Audio Tree, and I was watching them play on that. And then the next video after that was those guys playing with the lead singer and guitarist from Fall of Troy. Fall of Troy was supposed to be playing, but the other guys from the band couldn't make it. So CHON, on like a day's notice or something like that, filled in, and it sounded great. It's like all the comments were all like, "Hey guys, it's like all those Fall of Troy songs we've been practicing in our basement for so long finally are paying off. We get to play with like." Because that's another thing I forget. Like I don't think about that is in terms of these kind of experimental post or math rock, whatever you want to call these bands. Like Fall of Troy was kind of the inception of a lot of that stuff. They were the beginning, and in a lot of ways, I think they were ahead of their time. But I mean, they're back together, and they have a new album out this year. But yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's yeah, I feel like. Oh, and then Craig Owens is in a new group, or he's doing his own new thing. I don't know if you knew about that. Yeah, it's called Bad Channels. He refers to it as lo-fi stuff. I was listening to him on Lead Singer Syndrome whenever I was driving out to Louisiana, and apparently he's been helping write songs with, like, he helped write a song on Dr. Dre's last album. And because he's really good friends with this rapper John Connor, who is on Aftermath. And Dr. Dre called Craig Owens up. He was like, "Hey, I want you to do some vocals on a track from my last album." And
interesting.
Like, yeah, it is very interesting. I haven't gone back and listened to it, but anyway, he started talking about how he's doing this kind of lo-fi sound, like The Weeknd It's not really my jam. It's called Bad Channels with the X in between bad and channels. It's interesting. It is cool to see him back doing music though. Um, he has such an interesting and distinguishable voice too.
Yeah.
But I guess I've gone on enough about that. I mean, there's so much more stuff that we could talk about. And again, I feel like we should do like an end of the year, whether that's end of the year or the beginning of next year, doing a best of 2016 show or something like that.
Sounds good.
Have some guests on or something of that nature. And man, one of the things I want to talk about, and I guess we could scrap it until next, is because we're still a few episodes away from Christmas time, is holiday food, because that's one of my favorite things.
So yeah, it's been a while since we didn't meet up we didn't record for Thanksgiving. But today, speaking of food, so went to lunch over at Lee's Bakery, got some pho, which is a really cool spot. I've come to realize lately how frustrating it is, like whenever you've listened to a band for a while and they get really popular and then they get less good to listen to.
Here's the veil.
That sometimes that happens with restaurants where like I went to Lee's today and it's happened for the past year or so now where it seems like unless I go at 11:30 or 11:45, it's packed inside. I'm just like, damn it. Anyway, so I go there and then there's a little like Hispanic market and panaderia right next to it. And so I really wanted to go see if they had churros. So I go in there, no churros, but they had a little like a little bakery section. So I just got a little turnover. No big deal. Go to check out. She's like, no, it's a $5 minimum. I was like, okay, that's fine. This is cool. I'll walk around. I'll find some stuff. So got some hot sauce. And then I go to the back and their meat department has like all fresh marinated meats like pastor, chorizo, and then they obviously have like the big chicharrones, like the big ones. But right next to that, they have the chicharrones con carne that have huge pieces of pork on them still with that crispy skin, and they're under the heat lamp, so they're still warm with the crispy skin. So I got a half pound of that and just sat in my car just pounding it. It was so good, man. Oh, I was so happy.
I'm so jealous, man. I wish I could still eat that shit because chicharron, so good. Especially like whenever you took us out for that Colombian breakfast. And
yeah, so imagine that times 5. I mean, they're thick, dude. They're huge. They're great. So happy. It's like
they're huge. They're tremendous pork skins.
It was like dad wallet size. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
everybody, like so many receipts from
like a McDouble thickness. Like it was just a fat slab of pork with a crispy pork skin on it. It was so damn good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I have to just double up, triple up on my gout medicine one day, and you'll have to take me there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Either I'll chew it and then just toss it, like just spit it out.
Like a wine tasting.
Yeah, do it. Ooh. That's an interesting concept.
And then it all but then it's pork, so it just all gets stuck in your teeth. So.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I have that same tooth space in one spot where stuff gets painful. That's an interesting concept, though. We should do something like that. It'd be expensive as hell.
Yeah.
But what enjoyment other than at the end of the meal?
Just go to Fogo de Chao.
Yeah, exactly.
Just not actually swallow a single thing the whole time you're there and just eat for hours.
I want to taste stuff.
Bring me more.
That's interesting because you and I always talked about that in terms of dieting. Man, wouldn't it be great if there was like a type of gum that just tasted like, pot roasted mashed potatoes?
The Willy Wonka gum. Yeah, exactly.
But it's that would be interesting because aside from feeling full, what satisfaction or enjoyment of the food do you get by swallowing it? Not a whole lot, right? I mean, you get it by tasting it and chewing it.
I think it's just gonna be really weird having to spit it back out. Like you don't have the satisfaction of it going down. It's weird. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like we should try it one time, though. I think that would be fun. That would be an interesting thing to do.
So to your point, we actually have a whole lot to talk about on the next show because we didn't even touch TV. We had the Westworld season finale last
And
night.
that was like the second thing in my list on the description. I'm going to have to change that.
Got that. The Walking Dead mid-season finales next week. You turned me on to Michael Chase stand-up, which I started today and got about halfway through.
Dude, that shit. When he was talking,
check that out.
He was talking about, he's like, nah, she couldn't have been racist because she really was like, she didn't have any confidence, no self-confidence. You can't be a supremacist and be insecure at the same time.
Didn't talk about movies. Went and saw Magical Beasts and Where to Find Them over the holiday. Still want to go see Doctor Strange and Arrival. Rogue One coming out next week. We had college football mayhem. We got playoffs coming up in a couple
Maybe we need
weeks.
two shows this week, man.
So we got time to talk about that too before that actually happens. So
we have another show. I'll have an extended play coming out.
I got to get you that intro.
I talked to my our good buddy Rob Varden, who's over in Germany. Just about shooting the shit. Typical episode.
And then I've got another extended play about what, typically we close out the show. I say where to find me at on Twitter. You can find me there, but I've deleted Twitter from my phone. I want to do a whole extended play discussing social media and my thoughts on it lately and why I've tried to distance myself from it. We got a lot to talk about, though. But I think that's it for tonight.
It's
right?
exciting. Oh yeah. Again, me too. I mean, don't find me on social media. I'm not really anywhere. I mean, I guess you could go look at me up on Instagram if you want to see my pictures of my dog that I'm probably gonna like people.
So, but we're both still on Twitter. If you want to find us, it's just you can look through all our old tweets. Tim, where can they find you at?
It's an archive at this point. You can find me at Tim Herb.
You can find the elephant graveyard that is the architect. That is the _ARC, the number 1 and TECT. Collectively at Home Before Dark. That's before spelled B and the number 4. And as always, thanks for checking us out. We'll see you soon. And
we'll have a website one of these days.
Yeah, one of these days. I got a graphic. I cleaned out my office. We had so much stuff that we've done the past few weeks, but it's good to be back. Like I said, hopefully we'll get back on some sort of schedule. Holiday time is always tricky. So thanks for checking us out. We'll see you soon. As always, be home before dark.